From the underground to the world stage. One stage, countless voices. The conversation that shapes culture, politics, entertainment, and society. Politicians, comedians, musicians, actors, public servants, leaders, unfiltered, unscripted, unmissable.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Debated Live and Direct right here, broadcasting from London, England. My name is Jordan Kensington, your host for this week's show. We've got some special guests coming on the show today, very inspirational, very motivational, and all the interviews taking part on the show Debated today will also be transcribed for the National Post newspaper and, of course, Chelsea Monthly as well. So without much ado, we're going to go to our first guest of the evening. Before I introduce our guest, just a quick video literally talking about what she's about.
In this episode of Debated Live, we're excited to welcome Melissa Hall. Her incredible journey through loss, heartache, and recovery is sure to motivate everyone watching.
And self-love is very compassionate. It's very forgiving. It's very empathetic and sympathetic. But the one thing it isn't, it doesn't dismiss. It doesn't allow you to overlook. It's honest. It requires you to come to that conversation with an open heart, but an honest one as well. It's about being vulnerable and truly checking in, going through and looking at the parts of your heart that still hurt from pain from years and years ago, or what is it that you're avoiding so that you won't feel the pain of something that's happening today. That's what self-care practice and self-compassion practice looks like. It looks like giving you that time and that space for you to get clear on what it is that is keeping you from having everything that you truly want.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, please join us and welcome Melissa Hall on the show. Melissa, how are you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great, Jordan. Thank you so much for having me today.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on the Debated show. Melissa, so let's go back to the very start. Tell us about yourself, where you were born and where you grew up, and what you do for a living, for the people that haven't come across your story before. Just tell us a little bit about your past first, where you were born and where you grew up, and what you do for a living as well.
Sure. So I was born in San Diego.
I think we lost Melissa there. I think that her
My
connection.
mother was born a girl. This is so frustrating. I'm so sorry. So, am I back?
That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, we're back. We're back. Go for it.
Wonderful. So I was born in California, raised in a small town in Arizona. I'm the oldest of four. I have two sisters and a brother. And I am an artist by nature, a creator. If I'm not writing, I'm painting or arranging flowers or decorating. I love to incorporate beauty into my home and into my spaces. Right now, I'm an author. I've published my second book, Dear Drew, Creating a Life of Grief, where I talk about my journey of losing my son to an accidental drowning 25 years ago. From that experience, I have been fortunate to heal and to grow and to study different modalities of healing. And so I act as a guide for people who are grieving currently and looking for ways to incorporate their healing journey to culminate a life of beauty, a life of fulfillment, and of joy again.
Of course, I mean that's one of the major stories one of the reasons why we have you on the show as well, to talk about this story and how you dealt with it, how you've inspired so many from a place that most people will call darkness. Everybody knows how hurtful and painful it is when you lose a loss. When I myself, I lost my dad quite young in '95, and went through a whole period of pain, which is very, very difficult. Tell us a little bit about the story of your son. What happened? What actually happened? And just walk us through that story if you can, if you don't mind, for the viewers to kind of get their head around it.
Sure. So, my son, on the morning of May 19th in the year 2000, woke up very early. Drew loved life. He would wake up, and we had this rule that he couldn't get out of bed until the sun was actually up in the sky. And on this morning in Arizona, the sun was up at about 4:45 or 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning. So he woke up, came into the room, and said, "Hey, Mom, the sun's up. It's time for you to get out of bed." And his younger brother, Devin, was an asthmatic child, and I had been up giving him breathing treatments that entire night and was really, truly exhausted. And as a parent, I'm sure everyone can kind of relate to those nights where you have one child who's just sick and you're trying your best to keep them well and keep them from having to go to the emergency room. So Drew, being the vibrant little soul that he was ready to start the day. And so I got up with him. I made him his breakfast. He had two requests. He wanted either Rocky Road ice cream that morning or a can of raviolis. And we went with the can of raviolis. And I gave him his crayons and some paper and said, "Sweetheart, I'll be right back. I need to go check on your brother." So as I went back to check on his younger brother, Devin, he was struggling to breathe. I remember laying down beside him, and I just started to gently pat his back to help keep him resting and peaceful. And I woke up at some point later, maybe an hour and a half later. I didn't even realize that I had fallen asleep. And I instantly knew that I needed to find Drew. The house was quiet, and when Drew was in the house, things were never really quiet. He just was one of those children that kind of created a lot of noise. And so I went to look for him. And as I was looking at all of the familiar hiding spots and places where he would be, and I couldn't find him, I started to realize that there was a real problem here. At some point, to our home was open ever so slightly. And so I went outside calling for my son, looking for him everywhere. And then I noticed I live in a pretty agricultural area. So my home is surrounded by open farmland. And with the open farmland, there are open irrigation systems that are very near my home. And as I was outside looking for him, I noticed that there were footprints that were leading away from my home and toward the direction of a very large irrigation canal. And so with that, I ran to the irrigation canal just beyond our home. And I saw the evidence of where my son had been playing and where he clearly had fallen into the canal because there was a very large splash. It was about that time that a gentleman, a farmer, drove past where I was, and I asked him to please call the authorities, which he did. And that was a moment that is kind of seared into my mind because that's the moment my life completely changed. It really did kind of become the before and the after. And people came to search for him, and family and friends started to arrive to help in that search. It was about 7 hours later that they discovered his body, and they came to me and told me that my son had passed.
Man, look, it's painful. When you go through something like that, Melissa, I don't know whether you are someone who's a Christian or I don't know whether you're someone of faith. How do you personally deal with that? I just mentioned, I dealt with my dad lost, but I have children. Uh, you know, Children, it's a different story, right? Um, how did you cope? What did you do? I mean, I guess is how did you deal with the grief? Because this is the one of the most painful stories I've heard in a long time. I remember when I was reading your story, I was like, this is so painful. How did you deal with it?
Honestly, I dealt with it the best I could for quite some.
Right.
A lot of I'm so sorry, the connection's a little bad. I dealt
It's
with it
absolutely fine.
initially. Yeah, initially there was a lot of self blame. There was a lot of shame and guilt for having fallen asleep. And I struggled with the idea that I had failed my son in that moment, that somehow I should have been a better mother that day, that I should have somehow foreseen this unimaginable accident that I would have done anything to prevent. And the truth is, it took me time, but somewhere along the way, I truly did start to understand that grief and love are never in opposition, that they are actually meant to live together in us always. And as I stopped looking at my pain as this narrative of all of the worst things I could possibly believe about myself and started to see it as the irrefutable proof of the immense love that I have for my son and that I was able to share with him, even in his brief life of only 4.5 years. That is when grief for me stopped being an anchor and a weight, and it started to become a pathway towards possibility, towards the idea that I could move forward in life and bring Drew's all of the love that I have for him still to this day along with me. I stopped imagining pain or seeing pain as this evidence of loss and seeing it as this evidence of the love that remained. I just had to learn to reach for it differently.
That's incredible. When you go through something like that, you now have to think about um, also helping others, which you've spent most of your time doing from your podcast interviews and on from the book that you've written. Um, is this something that helps copes therapy? And did you go through a point of research on death in itself? Because when something happens like this, just out of the blue, after blaming yourself, you have to also come to terms with, but this is not normal. That why me? Why did this happen to me? And some people will go through a research period to kind of see, is there something after this, right? And when you interview a lot of people, they've had situations where the person who's departed has come in a form of a dream or something like that. Did you go through research on what happens on the other side? Because I mean, most of us, and I think 90% of the world, what you're taught at school is this is what happens. You get born, you leave a life, and you go to your bed. And I always have this thing that you imagine two identical twins in your mother's womb having a conversation, because they are playing and they're kicking each other, having a conversation, and they have baby talk. They know they're talking, they're communicating in their own telepathic way, not with sound. I mean, they've not learned how to speak, and they're like, hey, this is it. This is the world. This is right here in this womb. This is what the world is. And the other one says, no, it's not. It's not. And they say, do you know there's someone called mother on the other side? One of the twins is like, nah, there's no one called mother. And the other one says, but where's this food coming from? Do you see that thing? Goes, it's just coming. Just eat the food. There's nobody on the other side. The other twin says, can you hear? There's something. I'm telling you, there's something on the other side. They probably think when they get born is death to them, because they were having such a good time in there. And sometimes they don't even want to come out. Like they literally, they don't come out on time. And when they get born, they meet mom for the first time. They're like, so this is real. Like there's something else. Did you go through a phase of going deep diving into the death experience surpassing what was taught to you in your upbringing?
Absolutely. I have always had a strong faith. I was raised in a Christian home, and so I did have a knowingness of God and the presence of God. And my relationship to God really suffered after the accident because I did feel so responsible, and I also felt my questions were like, how could a loving God allow something like this? You know, how could I possibly be loved by my creator if I'm experiencing this magnitude of pain? And so, yes, of course, I researched, I studied not only the Bible, but you know, different forms of spirituality and different ways of connecting to that love that I still felt was present, that I really wanted to reach for. But my journey took me in many different directions. It led me to traditional therapy. It led me to alternative forms of healing, such as, you know, Reiki, using Reiki to help balance the body and bring energy and an awareness of my energy more to the forefront. But the areas where I really found kind of the answers that I was looking for came through the forms of having conversations with other parents that had lost children. Because, right, in the initial phase, I just needed to understand how they got through it. I knew enough to know that my son was in what I would call heaven and fully, you know, fine and not experiencing his transition the way I am. And so it was more about how do I support myself in this moment? How do I deal with his passing, even though I know and believe in heaven? How do I take that awareness and create a life that doesn't feel so oppressive and painful? And I found that oftentimes the people that helped me most were the people that were living the same journey that I was, which was to create a pathway forward that allows for there to still be for my life to have meaning, for my life to be more than the pain of the loss. But I didn't know how to do that. And so a lot of my research then and during that time was about how to support myself through the most unimaginable life that I never wanted. I never wanted to live this life. I didn't ask for this life. And I felt that I was being kind of unfairly forced into creating some sort of meaning out of unimaginable circumstances. And so I did. I studied, I researched, I went to support groups.
Right. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have Melissa Hall, a special guest of the show today. So, Melissa, that honestly, it's so inspiring. What you went through, and you wrote a book. You wrote a book about it. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? And that's Dear Drew, and I can see it behind you. Tell us a little bit about that book and how therapeutic was it writing that book, Dear Drew?
So honestly, it's probably the most rewarding experience that I've had post Drew's loss. I took my 25-year journey and I answered the questions that I had been asked along the way, and also going back to answer the questions that I had initially. Now that I had the benefit of time and learning and growth. And Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief is really all of the best practices that I have learned throughout my 25-year journey to help support and give somebody who is grieving today some ideas of not only how to support themselves, but the research and the methodologies I recommend doing, because they work.
No, that's
They work
amazing.
if you dedicate yourself to finding joy and happiness again. It is for you.
That's amazing. And Dear Drew, when is it released? Is it out now? Where can people actually buy Dear Drew right now? Where can people buy the book from?
So you can buy the book at all major booksellers, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Target, or you can also find the book at my website, melissahall.com.
Okay, and so let's talk about your journey towards recovery, per se. And one of the things you've talked about is, helping others, talking to other people that have been through the same situation as you. That sort of you can actually be inspired by their journey. What other healing methods did you talked about Reiki as well, but what other healing methods did you do? We've spoken to people that have used things like NLP, neuro linguistic programming. People have changed their lifestyle altogether. Some people have kind of had a newfound way of looking at life. It's not just work, work, work anymore. You kind of cherish each day. So, what other kind of coping mechanisms did you do on your way to getting to happiness? Because the thing about life is, there's some challenging things that will happen. There's some crazy things that will happen. There's some unbelievable things that will happen. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to get out of life alive, right? So we have to, at some point, say to ourselves, okay, all of this has happened, but we do have to find a little bit of happiness or a lot of happiness while we're here on this thing called Earth. How did you get to that place where you could smile again and say, hey, you know what? I don't have to blame myself for things that have happened in the past. And I also, Drew, is with you, day to day, and having that consolation that is in heaven. How did you get to that happy place again?
I will say that one of the most helpful things that I've done is understand the benefit of service. I started to talk about water safety education almost immediately after Drew's accident, and I went to the most vulnerable population, which were children under the age of 5. So I went to preschools and I started to talk to the children about Drew's story. I started with the preschool that he was currently attending, and I explained what happened to him, and I explained the need and the importance of them being vigilant about water and how to be safe around water. And from there, I spoke to the parents, and I just kept serving a community so that they could hopefully avoid the same type of outcome that I was now living. That is where I found so much healing and a gratitude, if you can believe that, gratitude for the opportunity to take the unimaginable and create a meaning and a purpose inside of it. That was how I turned this very tragic set of circumstances into what felt like a personal triumph, which gave me the space to forgive myself. It gave me the opportunity to sit with those questions, the what ifs, the what did I miss? How could I have done it better? And understand that I was a loving mother before the accident. I was a loving mother the day of the accident, and I remain Drew's loving mother. Drew is not gone, and his life is a bright part of my life. And so I just have continued sharing his story, sharing my journey of healing, and all the different avenues and places that it took me to. I started with painting. I didn't have words necessarily to articulate everything that I felt inside, but I could move paint across a canvas, and it felt like it was a representation of something that I needed to at least release and allow to be seen outside of just carrying it. And from there, I discovered that writing was a wonderful avenue for me. And so I began to write. And from there, public speaking came, sharing my story from a stage, and then really building community and connection. So my service has evolved from water safety education to supporting people on their healing journeys so that they can truly integrate the experience and use it as a foundational force that propels them forward and not limitation.
I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible. As a parent, I've got two myself, a boy and a girl, Jordan Jr. and Lisa. And there are a lot of parents who will read your story and be watching your story and start thinking twice about their children, and kids are so innocent, and you have to be so careful um, in looking after them. We had a huge story here in the UK a few years ago, a Madeleine McCann story, where the couple just went on a holiday, a trip in Spain, and they were just having dinner. And they left the kids at home, but it was literally eye level. They could see the kids from where they were staying. And when they came back, the little girl, Madeline, had gone missing. And it's different from your story with Drew, but obviously these parents have gone through a nightmare ever since. And in their case, knowing that they don't have a clue what happened to their child, they don't know whether the child's still alive. And obviously, the child is a full grown woman now, who probably doesn't know who their parents are. They literally don't know. So for the parents that are looking and watching, what advice would you give to them in terms of security? I mean, we already do as much as possible to keep our children safe, but sometimes you can't do enough, right? But sometimes you also need to hear from other people. I always say when it comes to parenting, nobody goes to a school, which is wrong, by the way. No one goes to a school that teaches you how to become a good parent. I mean, we don't get given a manual, and then kids are kids. Kids will do whatever. I mean, kids they just think free. They're just living life free, and I mean, that's all justice to them. So, what advice would you give to parents who might be thinking, "Hey, do you know what? I need to tighten up on safety for my kids. I need to check in on them more. I need to talk to them about danger spots." What kind of advice will you give to parents?
Thank you for that question. I think that's one of the hardest questions for me.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Melissa Hall joining us live today.
Yes,
She's
so
just having
really
some problems with the
every
internet.
loss is very unique. I know. I'm so sorry about the connection
No,
issues.
absolutely, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I always like to begin by reminding everyone that everyone's loss experience is as unique as the person that they've loved. And so it's always very nuanced. The circumstances that cause separation vary. But the one thing that I have come to understand through my own personal experience is that separation is an illusion. We are as connected to the love that we shared in the physical realm, and after transition, that love is still present. The journey, if you will, is learning how to stay in connection with the love that remains. My love for Drew remains. I connect with him in different ways. I feel his loving presence always. And I have found that that is something that no matter what the circumstances are that have separated a parent and a child through loss or thing or where the circumstances don't have explanations, the one thing that I have found I can't really explain why, but that is something that helps to bring that presence and that sense of connection and make it more tangible. And I have always found that being able to do that and to practice that with families that have lost a child, it creates that feeling of connection again, which is so important because that's what we really mourn. We mourn the connection, that physical interaction, but we are still very much connected through the love that we continue to share.
I love that. I love that. And obviously, you mentioned you have always been a Christian, and it's an important part. And then you talked about, yeah, understanding and feeling the spiritual presence of Drew, and understanding that we need to become more aware of the spiritual side. That's something that I've been talking a lot lately. Because we've been interviewing a lot of people from MPs to politicians to doctors, etc. And everybody seems to be on the same greed. Not how it used to be 30 years ago. Now everybody seems to be on a journey of understanding that there is more to life than just the physical body, and there's a mind, body, and soul. I sort of liken it to when Jesus, aka Yeshua, came. Um, he didn't just come just to help us, repent for our sins. He also came to show us, because I think the people at the time just thought this was it. This is the world. This is it. When you die, that's it. He came to show us that there is another side, and the fact that he rose again was a proof to the disciples and the whole world that there's something else after this. And since then, you speak to a lot of doctors who've got nothing to do with religion. They're not Christian. They're not, spiritual at all. But they will say, hey, you know what? We've witnessed a lot of people go to the other side and come back. We've seen a lot of stuff. So I want you to talk a little bit about the spiritual side. That's something that a lot of people, again, have to self-discover, because it's not, I mean, when you go to uni and you're doing sciences, you can study human biology, you know where your ears are, your head is, your brain, all of that stuff. But when it comes to something that's very unique to you, and everybody's got one, you've got your soul, you got your spirit, everyone, you got your spiritual side. That side seems to be something that is you know completely out of bounds. No one talks about it, no one teaches about it in school. Tell us a little about what you learned about your spiritual side. There's a mind, there's a body, and a soul. What did you learn about the spiritual side, and what did you learn about the journey to the other side, in your opinion?
Yeah. I learned that death is not what I believed it would be. It is not an ending, an invitation to experiencing life in a new and different way, one that requires faith, one that requires me to believe in what I cannot see, what I have no evidence to prove, but that I know deeply is real and lasting and true for me. Drew's passing has been the greatest gateway to living a more spiritually rich life, one that is born out of faith that I fought for. It was not instantaneous. My relationship with God was definitely not what it is today in the beginning stage. I had a lot of questions. I felt very separate. I felt very almost punished, if you will, by my creator during that time. And what I've come to do, I'm back.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. The experiences that I have been asked to, to endure, to grow from, have ultimately led me to an unshakable faith and testimony of the resiliency of the heart and that spark of the divine that lives within each one of us. How it is truly, it is a force that defies odds. It has answers that you don't understand where they come from. That is where my peace has been derived from leaning into this faith, this journey of self-discovery. What do I really want from my relationship with my creator, my God? And what does that look like? And I have built that relationship over time, one now that I know is paramount to all of the best aspects of the life that I enjoy today. It has come through that journey of faith, being tested, really being tested. But then when I have found that place of peace and that really does kind of surpass all of the pain in a way that I don't necessarily understand, but I know is meant for me, and I know it's meant for others. And it's not something that I want to hold on. I want to share this. I want to share this journey of self-discovery where people can align with that divine part of themselves and create a strength and inner resilience that allows them to face the most challenging and difficult circumstances that life can throw at them.
No, that's amazing. Sharing circumstances. And you said something earlier on when you were going through, you were looking for people who had been through it, and that helped you a lot. Last year, I went through something with my wife, which was our first daughter. She was my wife was losing blood, and she'd lost the water. It's called PPRM, premature ruptured membrane, and every single doctor we were in Paris, so some one of the best hospitals. We had 7 doctors in front of us saying to us, "Look, it's not going to happen. You need to prepare for the worst." Like literally, she's lost the water. We don't know the state of the baby. She's losing blood every single day. It was a nightmare. We did a documentary about it, and we found ourselves looking for somebody, a couple, someone who'd been through the same thing. You were literally
Yeah.
going on the internet for trying to find someone, just find a story if someone's been through PPRM. I've never prayed like this before in my life. We were praying every single day, just literally making sure your mind was focused on that faith that you said, that passes all understanding, believing in things that are unseen. It was so important for us to be. I mean, we went through the period of why us. You know, I mean, you're looking at old couples. You just want to have a baby. There are people even that don't want to have a baby and they just fall pregnant. I'm like, why are we going through this situation now? But by the grace of God, the baby came through, and we had that. But then this year, it was funny. We did a documentary about it. We posted it on YouTube, and a lady was going through the same thing, and she dropped us a message. She said, "I just came across your video. I'm literally going through the same thing. We had no hope. I was just
Mm.
looking for somebody. I was looking for anybody, and I just bumped into your story. Watching this video has given us so much hope." Um, so if you've got, you know, a parent or somebody reading your story on the National Post or watching this interview, and they're going through something similar, and they have found themselves questioning God, because it happens to the best of us. Doesn't matter how good you are, you get to a point where you're like, why me? Why did you do this? And your relationship with God kind of takes a bruising, because you start saying, like you said, if you are such a good God, why will this happen? And you don't understand that there are other forces at play, and because we're seeing just with the physical eyes and not seeing through the spiritual eyes. What advice would you give to them, parents that are going through a similar thing right now? Because this is not an isolated case. These things are happening all across the world,
Yeah.
in this current. What would you give to them, especially in their relationship with the Most High? What would you make sure they kind of turn back from this accusatory feelings, and kind of hum back to, there is, it sounds very dark, but everything happens for a specific reason. We're not just put here just to just roam about. Things happen for a specific reason. What would you say to them?
God can take it. Whatever it is that you need to say to him, whatever is on your heart. I think the best advice I was ever given was to speak honestly to God, to say, I don't understand. This makes no sense. I don't know if I'm on.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I had to begin where I was, and I needed God to meet me there. And at first, I felt very guilty for not having more love for my creator. I really felt separate. I really wasn't uh, necessarily seeking him. I was seeking a connection to my son. And so I think, if I'm being honest, you have to be honest with where you're at and begin that relationship there. If you pretend or try to put yourself in a frame of mind that isn't honest, it leaves that little bit of separation between yourself and the creator. And I think that as I have learned and grown in my relationship with God, I speak to God all the time, but I speak to him very much like I'm speaking to you. I'll say, I don't get this one. This is not what I wanted. This is really not cool. Or I flat out reject this. What are you thinking? I have a very honest relationship with my creator, but I found that that's what works for me. I had the examples of a mother who was very pious, a lot of praying in folded hands, arms folded on her knees. I needed a different kind of relationship with God. And so I think you have to be honest and begin with what feels authentic, that aligns you to that part of yourself that remains divine, even if you're questioning it. Lean into that and allow for the growth to come, because it will if you continue to pursue it. And so I know that might not be the traditional answer, pray, lean, have faith, read the Bible. For me, it had to begin with honest conversation and the recognition that my relationship needed to improve. I needed to understand what faith would really look like and mean like, or and how that would manifest in what my relationship, my walk with God would be. And I allowed for it to evolve. It didn't have to look the way that it looked when, in the examples of my parents or my grandparents or even my extended family. I allowed myself to really find my journey and my connections with God through a multitude of different spiritual exercises and, retreats, getting and really diving into different spiritual practices. I studied the Buddha. I studied, energy healing. I studied, I got into talking about the universe and really understanding things from a multitude of places. But everything led me back to this relationship with my Creator in a way that just solidified my own belief and really strengthened my own testimony and my faith. And so I'm very much, I kind of walk this path with God on my own terms. It doesn't necessarily look like going to a specific church every week, but there is a spiritual presence in my life that is undeniable, that leads me and allows me to live with healing, with a sense of being restored and whole again, which is a big thing to say when you feel like your world has been ripped apart and you don't even.
That's right.
Remaining living child. It was a journey that. So I think you have to be honest about your relationship with God and let God meet you where you're at. And trust me, He can take it. Even if you're upset, even if you don't even want to admit or you don't feel like you have faith at the moment, God can handle it. And you just have to show up authentic and then believe in the possibility of what can transform, because transformation is something that it's magical, but it is real. And when you experience it, it is undeniable, and it will change your life in a way that will inspire you to share this journey with others so that others can understand what I say is I have a sense of wholeness that I never imagined 25 years ago. But 25 years later, not only is it something that I know that I have, it's something I want to share and help bring more people into, because living with this kind of peace and this kind of happiness, even though I've experienced so much pain, is a miracle.
It's definitely a miracle. It's definitely a miracle.
It's evidence of what God can. It is a miracle.
It's definitely a miracle. Melissa, would you say, it's a double-barreled question, actually. Are you happy today? And what is your definition of happiness?
I am. I am more happy today, and that is the direct result of all of the experiences that I have lived through and grown from. Happiness for me means waking up with a sense of inner peace and self-acceptance, with a desire to live through service. I have found that what makes me most happy is sharing my story, sharing my healing journey, so that other people can discover theirs or maybe commit to one. And that is what brings me happiness and joy. I love my family. I have come to understand that the way I want to live and what brings me happiness are shared moments, shared experiences, service of others. That's what brings my heart happiness and joy.
And I like that. And obviously you've got another child. I don't know if you had any more children afterwards. Do you find yourself becoming more overprotective? How did you how are you now as a parent? Because when something like that happens, it's that you become it's either balance or just full on. It's like literally no, that's you're not going there. How you cope now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish my kids could be here to answer it. Yes, so Devin is now married and has a beautiful wife. So
Oh wow.
Drew's younger brother is now 29 years old, or soon to be 29 years old, and has a beautiful wife.
Mhm.
My husband and I at the time have now a daughter, Hope. So
Oh wow.
Drew has a sister that came 4 years
Mm.
after his passing, and Drew, Devin, and Hope, the three of them have brought more joy to my life. But yes, I would say that I struggled to be, right after the accident with Drew, being maybe an overprotective parent. But my children are strong. They're strong-willed, and they're very much their mothers, children. And they
Mm.
they let me know when it's too much. They help me grow through communication of what feels like too much for them. My daughter Hope is studying architecture in Japan currently. The
Wow.
separation between her, I'm in the United States in Arizona, and she's in Kyoto. There are always unforeseen things that could
Mm.
happen. But my peace and my inner peace comes from the connection that I have with them. I don't have to see them every day or speak to them every day to know that I love them and that I feel the love that they have for me. I really do have a spiritual life where connection isn't just about physical interactions. It's about the resonance
Mm.
of the love and the beauty that I want our relationships to be founded in. And what that looks
Mm.
like through space and time really doesn't change. I have to maybe spend a little bit more time reminding myself, that the universe is a safe and wonderful place. It
Mm.
conspires to bring us all of the beauty that life has to offer. It doesn't mean that we won't be asked to experience difficulties, but it doesn't mean that the difficulty is the only thing that we will know. We have to be able to look beyond it. And that's what my spiritual practice and my relationship with my kids look like today. One that's much more based in faith and the trust that I have a universe that conspires and a loving God that conspires to bring them exactly to the places that they need to be. And I have come to understand that is enough. That's all I can ask, because
No, I,
we're never guaranteed a tomorrow. So I live really present in the day, in the moment, and create that kind of connection,
no, I really love
whether
that.
they're
I
with
really
me
love
or
that.
a phone call away or, a video. Yeah, that's how I get through it
No, I
now.
really, No, I really love that. And obviously, you're looking into the future. We've the last 3 4 years, the whole world had this lockdown pandemic with COVID. It kind of reset a lot of people. A lot of people's plans got kind of turned around in circles, and people made more plans. Some people were like restricted some of their plans. On your side, Melissa, when you look at the world today, what are you seeing on yours? I always say everybody's eyesight of what they see is not the same. You can get two people in a room and say, what are you seeing? They see something completely different to it. What do you see in the world today? Do you see a world that will one day be peaceful, or do you see a world that is full of anger? What do you see in the world today, and what's your hope for the world?
What I see is a world that is begging for connection. I think that
Mm.
people feel more separate and separated by a multitude of what they perceive as differences. And the way that I see the world is one where if we could understand how interconnected we really are, and how we all really do share this beautiful earth experience together at this time. If we could find a pathway for more inclusion and for more people to be welcomed and everyone to have a seat at the table, I think that we could create the kind of world community that I think we all long for. I think we all long for a world where our children can grow up in, peacefully, in a world where there isn't war, there isn't crime and in hatred of our fellow brothers and sisters. I look at the world and see the possibilities of the love that is here that just needs to be recognized. And if we could come with more compassion and more understanding and a willingness to exchange ideas and a willingness to maybe not understand or see things identically, but to have room for those discussions, I see that as what the world needs most today, is this understanding that we all need each other. We really do. And whether we see it or recognize it, if you start to take a look at the world, if you start to eliminate like cultures and you start to eliminate countries, and then you find out just how interdependent we really are. And so why not create the conditions and the possibilities where there's more love, more shared moments that bring joy, that bring community, that bring understanding. I think that is what the world needs, and that's how I approach my life. I seek to be a contributor, a force for good that creates more of those types of opportunities than one that sits back and says, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I think that there's always something we can do about it, even if it's just our attitudes towards what is possible and still can be done and accomplished.
I love that. Now, talking about the world, last week we had a special guest on the show. We had an MP, Member of Parliament on the show, Dean Russell. And we also had a film writer, journalist and creative, Del Boy Award being on the show. And you spoke about world. I will play a little clip from last week's show, and then we'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about what you think about this, because this is happening in the UK and is soon to, I think, will come to the US because it's literally being extended. I won't say too much, but I'll play the clip.
You will get a digital ID. You have no choice. But what if we do? Imagine if the whole of the UK decided not to sign up to the mandatory digital ID. Here's what would happen in the first 30 days. And by day 30, that's when the story really begins. Day 1, the rollout begins and nobody signs up. Millions are expected overnight, but online portals sit empty, mate. The press call it a national act of defiance, and the government are just sitting there looking shocked. Day 2 to 4, the system stalls, but people start to adapt. Pharmacies go off book, doctors start handwriting notes, employers pay cash in hand. On the ground, life goes on, just not in the way Labour planned it. Day 5 to 7, benefits freeze, universal credit, pension, child support, but communities rally. Church halls, mosque, community centres turn into aid hubs. The state may hold the money, but people take care of their own. Day 8 to 12, the media splits. The Mirror and the Independent call it sabotage, but independent outlets call it for what it really is, a proper strike, mate. Here goes Keir Starmer on the news saying, parents should be thinking about their children. To the public, that man just sounds desperate. Day 13 to 17, flights cancelled, Brits can't travel because their passport's invalid without a digital upgrade. Tourism collapses, airlines bleed, and the pound dips. Foreign commentators start paying attention, asking, are the UK boycotting their own government? Day 18 to 21, hospital strain. Appointments carry on, but surgeries and prescriptions start to back up. But doctors and nurses are on this thing too, so they start whispering about breaking some rules. Here comes Starmer again. This is reckless. This is dangerous. Ain't that what we're trying to tell you? Day 22 to 25, cash in hand spreads. Employers, landlords, shops, they all start leaning off the book. Official trade slows, the underground network grows, and the public keep moving even though the government are looking real stuck right now. Day 26 to 29, Parliament fractures as protests surge. Labour MPs face a social blackout. No one will talk to them, no shop will serve them, not even a handshake. Thank Ireland for this one. Day 30, a full month in, the refusal holds. System stalled, the economy bleeding, and the government cut off by the people. And the whole world sits waiting and watching. Who will break first? Turns out making digital IDs mandatory wasn't a strength, it was a weakness. And the whole system collapses the moment people stop playing along. But That was just the first month. Want to know what happens on month 2? Drop a comment below and follow if you're done watching passively. We decode the myth and we don't clap for crumbs.
Amazing having him on the show here. And Del Boy talking about the system, digital ID that's coming. And you were talking about the world there, Melissa. What did you think about that? That was last week's show. And what are your views on, because this is something as a lot of people here in the UK are kind of up in arms about. So what do you think about digital ID? I don't know if your guy Trump has introduced it yet, but what do you think? Are you guys getting rumors of that over there in the US?
We definitely have a form of it called Real ID, and it's now, this Real ID it's a not only a driver's license, but it basically authenticates who you are through the government so that you can travel on domestic flights and apply for social programs. It's now becoming more and more of a requirement. My thoughts are, I agree with your guest. I think that this is something that needs to be really thought about. I do think that the ability for our governments to survey us at such a high level does come with certain concerns, but at the same time, I live a life that I'm not concerned about somebody, watching me necessarily or seeing what I'm doing, because that's just how I live. So it's kind of I can see how it can be a problem, and I can see how it could also help in certain ways. So I think I'm one of these people where I still need more information. I still need to kind of fully understand, what it would really ultimately lead to. As your guest kind of describes, what I see is government falls away. What's required is then for us to create community and to create a pathway for people to find the services that they need, regardless of whether or not there is a governmental structure. That we can see evidence of that throughout the history of just time, humanity. Where there is a will to survive, there will be a group of people that will work toward their own survival. And as we build community and create those constructs of service, that is how we can all, journey forward together.
I love that. I love that. Melissa, you will be joining us at the grand finale end of show. We got next guest coming into the show called Guiliana Kiloze. And Melissa, it's not a goodbye for you now. We're going to see you at the end of the grand finale. Our next guest on the show, before I introduce, I'll play a
Guys,
little
I want
clip
to say
from
this
her.
loud enough that everyone can hear it. When we decided to walk with Christ, we decided to walk by faith, not by sight. So we need to stop asking him, God, where are you? Why am I in this place? I don't understand it. What's going on? He is putting us in a position to depend on him daily, because we chose, when we decided to walk with him, to walk by faith, not by sight. Okay, the path is not easy. He didn't say, I'm going to lay it out for you and you get to walk down a golden road. That's not what he said. He said, you are choosing to walk by faith, not by sight. But my plan is so good. If you just stick with it, my plan is so good. But guys, he did give us peace. So remember that you have the gift of the Holy Spirit, which is peace. So even though we're walking through craziness, you can have that peace in your heart knowing that he's still in control. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
I love that. Remember, you have still peace in your heart. I just love that. Guiliana, welcome to the show. Welcome to Debated. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Guiliana, I don't know if you heard a little bit about Melissa's story there. Melissa's story was quite inspiring. She just wrote a book, Dear Drew, talking about the loss of her son and at only 4 years old, and dealing with that. We're going to speak to her at the grand finale in the end after yourself and another guest we got coming on. So before we start with you, Guiliana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into faith?
Yeah, of course. Fame? Did you say fame or faith?
No, fate, fate.
Fate. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So it was a long journey. So I grew up in the Catholic Church. I actually went to a Polish monastery with monks. And that was the church that I was raised in. It was very formal. And I went to church because mom said I had to, and that was the extent of it. My dad, he was Jewish, and he also did what mom said because that's what makes everyone happy. So
Right.
that was kind of my path was the Catholic Church. That's what I knew, and I went because mom said I had to. Throughout college, I kind of tried to go down my own path. I tried to carve my own way through the world. I kind of left faith in God and everything in my past, and I said, I can do it better on my own. And that kind of sent me into a spiral and going and putting my time and effort into the wrong places, the wrong people. And I was in a very dark place. And the only reason why I was saved from that place was faith, was God. And he just showed up so strong in my life. And then I started seeing miracles in my life that were incredible, like things I couldn't even explain. And even like my grandfather, the day before he passed away, unexpectedly, it was very random, unexpectedly, I was able to sit down with him and talk to him about faith. And there were just so many incredible things that happened in my life. And now I completely live my life walking with faith, not by sight. I was in the medical field. My plan was to go to medical school. I did go to medical school, and I quickly found out that that was not my path. I didn't love the medical field here in America. I didn't love the way that they were teaching us how to practice medicine. So I decided that I am gonna leave and figure it out along the way.
Mhm.
And since then, I've literally been, okay, God, you go first. You go first because I have no idea what I'm doing. My whole life has been about medicine, so this is all new territory for me.
And it seems you've just gone deep, and I mean, one of your content that went viral was one of the ones we just played now, which was about faith. And it's funny because Melissa, our guest before, talked about having faith that passes all understanding, stuff, the belief in things you can't see. In the world that we're living in today, looking at everything you see in the world, from the wars that are happening to the rumors of wars. We just played a guest on last week's show. We had an MP, a member of parliament last week, and a filmmaker last week talk about digital IDs. Which kind of have rumors of the mark of the beast, and then there's loads of things happening. You as someone who is dedicated and dedicating your life in making sure your connection to God is very strong. How do you ensure that you have no fear? Because when you are in a world that exists today where you have loads of media bombardment and loads of social media, you're probably very younger than I am, because in my days, there wasn't that much social media. I mean, you didn't have 2,000, 10,000, 10 million friends. It just didn't make any sense. So
Yeah.
today we are bombarded, and the information that we're bombarded with is literally is getting to people. You're getting a lot of ADHD happening. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that fear when you're having the news completely bombard you with information 24/7?
This is a very interesting topic. I actually did a video on this, and there's more that I want to add to it. So what I talked about in the video is pretty much if we get so caught up in the world, we forget about our purpose because we hear all these crazy, terrible things that happen in the world that we can't really do anything about. Like realistically, like there are some things that happen in this world that there's nothing that we can do. And we tell God, we're like, please, make us bigger to help us move, to help us, be a big impact in this world. But the reality is that God has us exactly where we are right now because he has people that we need to help in the place that we are right now. Not, out in another country, the people that are starving out in another country, not the people out in another country that are, all those things are happening to them. Yes, all of those bad things are happening to them, and God has a plan for them as well. But your plan might not be that. And I think when we get bombarded with so much media and so much information about all these bad things that are happening, we feel like it's our responsibility to do something. And we have to realize that God is in control. God has a plan. That could be part of our life, but it might not be. And we can't flood ourselves with these emotions that make us just stagnant where we are, because then we are not helping the way that God needs us to help where we are, right? So like God has a plan for us, and we need to help right now in the space that we are in, not across the country, not, everywhere else, but right now. Now, another side of that I kind of dove into, and this was kind of something that I had a deep dive, spiraling brain thought about for a few days, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much the idea of, okay, we are supposed to, as Christians, live outside of the world, right? Like we aren't supposed to just blend in with everyone else. We are supposed to be different, walk in the way that God and Jesus wanted us to walk. But there's a point where we still have to walk in society. Otherwise, we're deemed as crazy, or, we won't be able to make money. Like, we have to be part of this society. We have to be part of the economy. We can't just kind of live on the street. What Jesus did is incredible, but, like, is that realistic for everyone to do? No. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, and let me take that back. I don't know. I don't know. The conclusion that I
Yeah.
came to with that, or the idea is like, okay, where is the balance where we are supposed to step out of the world and be in the world at the same time? Where is that balance in work, in
Where is that
life?
balance? We will also have the Zina Ikeme coming on the show as well. I will be talking to her about some of the things. But when you mentioned balance, I just, it just occurred to me. We were talking to Melissa about what happened in her life. She lost a child that was 4 years old, Drew. And she said it. She said at some point she was angry with God. She was literally like, "Why me? Why is this happening to me right now?" But then she took the pain and looked past the body and connected spiritually with God. And what she's doing now is helping other people going through the same thing. And sometimes through that grief, you can find a plan. I mean, you said you let God be in control, which is true. But sometimes you might be the Moses that God needs to use, right?
Mhm.
Because Moses doesn't want to be used, right? So Jonah doesn't want to go to Nineveh. He doesn't want to go to
Mhm.
Nineveh. God has to use somebody. So maybe the post that you make, or maybe the debate that you do with somebody, or maybe something you say can bring up something in them to say, "Hey, do you know what? I'm going to pick up and pray, or I'm going to do something now. I'm going to connect with God spiritually." Um, do you not think at this time in society, in the world, that where a lot of people are crashing out, a lot of people are feeling there is need for God's people to literally just come together and go like, and you're doing it already, by the way, and just be like, "Hey, I'm gonna spread the message. This is the calling." Do you feel that? Because someone could be watching right now, listening or reading, because this is all going to be in a National Post newspaper and Chelsea Monthly as well, or reading your article and saying, "Hey, do you know what? This has inspired me because I feel like I had a calling. I feel like a calling to debate people. I feel like I had a calling to inspire people through my content. That this has made me do it." Do you feel that we all understand God is driving the plane or the car, but we still need to be passengers in that car? We need to act in a world that needs human interaction to connect us spiritually to the Most High.
Of course, but we can't get caught up in it. There's a
Mm.
difference between being a part of it and then getting caught up in it. When we have these crazy political debates because we think our side is better and we think God is supporting our side and not the other side of the political party, like that is doing exactly what the devil wants us to do, right? Is like falling into the world. So yes, we need to be a part of it. We need to be part of that car going into the world and spreading the word and everything. But as Christians, we need to be careful that we're not becoming a part of it, that we are still separated and we are still walking the way that God wants us to walk, with peace, right? With peace in our hearts and love, and not getting so angry and frustrated when people don't have the same belief as us. And something that my mom told me today when I was talking to her, because again, my dad's Jewish, my mom's Catholic, so we have some differences in the family. And she said, she's like, you have a type of faith that is, go out there, go get it, go share it, go spread the word. And some people don't. And that's okay. God needs different kinds of people because we are all different. So if I'm sitting here and I'm going out there and I'm spreading the word, I don't feel like I need to tell everyone else to go do the same thing because God has a plan for them, and not everyone is outgoing, not everyone is wanting to go vocalize their opinion, but they are willing to just go love the ones around them. And that is still sharing God because God is love. And I think love is so much deeper than we really understand it to be. It can't just be a feeling because we know that God is love. And when we share love with someone, that spreads through the world like fire, and a good fire. And same thing with hate. When you spread hate, you never know what that person is going to go home and do. You never know. If you get mad at someone, you cut them off and they're mad and blah, blah, blah. You don't know. They could go home and take that anger out on their children, on their wife or husband or whoever. You never know. So it's always better to share love. So yes, we need to be in that vehicle going into the world and spreading it, but everyone has a different way of spreading it because we are all different and God made us differently.
I love that. I love that. How do you pray? A lot of people have found in recent times that some of the things you were taught growing up, going to church or religion, for example, um, wasn't working because you find some people say, "Oh, my prayers are not getting answered," and then you meet other people. Melissa came before and talked about a version of what she does, which is kind of close to what I do. I just have conversations with God like normal. I'm not Shakespeare. I'm not having this conversation where it doesn't make any sense. I don't speak to normal people like this. We're gonna have a conversation. Like if your Father in heaven is unconditional love, they know you. They know you're pretending. They know you don't speak like that in real life. But a lot of people still do it. I mean, the church teaches you how to kind of like talk in a certain way. You have to talk in a certain code, and it's like, does God really want us to be talking in codes or just being ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, there are comedians. The people are just funny and they make fun of it. So how do you pray? What's your style?
I am I am all over the place with prayer. Sometimes
Right.
when I feel something very passionately or there's something very deeply I need to pray about, I will get on my knees right where I am and I will lay my head down and pray. But there's other times when I'm sitting there and I said, "God, I don't know what to wear today. Can you help me out?" And like my prayer can be very intentional, it can be very formal, or it can be like I'm talking to my best friend. Hey, I did this today. I'm brushing my teeth and I'm just talking to him like I'm talking to my best friend. um, I always like to think whenever I snooze my alarm in the morning that like that extra like 15 minutes I like talk to him. And it's very casual, it's like, well, why did I do this? Or I wonder if this is going to happen today. Like, what do you think about this? And like at some point, I'd probably fall back asleep and wake back up and do it again. But no, it's
Like
not
that.
always very formal. It's like talking to my best friend, and I think that people should get more in the habit of that. Like you're brushing your teeth, you're washing the dishes, you're taking your kids to school, you're walking the dog. Hey God, how are you? Hey God, I have this going on today. Like, what do you think? Like, just like you were talking to your best friend because he wants to know what's going on in your life. Yeah, he can see it. Of course, he can see it. But there's so much, I mean, like, think about people on social media. Like, think about the influencer that you love on social media. You always see what they're doing, but it's so much
Yeah.
different if they were to reach out to you and talk to you about it. That creates a relationship. Yes, he sees what we're doing, but we need to be creating a relationship. And you don't create a relationship by just praying in a very formal like setting and saying all the right words. When you create a relationship with someone, they see you in all walks of life, good, bad, formal, informal, everything, because that's what a friend does. That's how a friend sees you.
I like that. last year, I wrote a book called "Why Do We Sin?" It's available on Amazon and everything else. And I ask a lot of people when they come on the show. I say, "Why do we sin? What's your answer to the question? Why do we sin? And how do you deal with sin?" Because I haven't met someone yet that's like, "Hey, I'm perfect. I don't sin." So how do you deal with sin, and why do you think we sin?
Yeah, that's a very crazy question. Um,
Mm,
I don't have the answer to
mm,
why we have such a strong desire for sin, other
mm,
than the fact of, okay, like Satan's trying to destroy us. Like we
mm,
got someone working on the other side that's just trying to pull us down continuously.
mm,
Why do we follow that so easily? I have no idea. I think that's the fault of the flesh. I think it's the fault of the
mm,
flesh. Like God said, our
mm,
spirit is strong, but our flesh is weak. Remember when he
mm,
told all the disciples to pray and he came back out and they were all
mm,
sleeping and he said, "Guys, your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak." So there's
mm,
something about our flesh that is pulled into that darkness where and then the craziest thing is that we get pulled there and then our spirit is like, why'd you do that? Like, you
yeah,
feel so
yeah,
terrible now. Like, what was the
yeah,
benefit of that? And then the next day you do
mm,
something else and you're like, why did I do that? It's a
yeah,
vicious cycle. But I think that's what makes heaven so beautiful is that we don't have to
mm,
worry about that. Like that is what we
mm,
are striving for is to be in a place where all of that sin, all of that hatred that we feel from sin, for ourselves, for the people around us, for everything, it'll go away. Like that place will be
mm,
such a beautiful place. So yeah,
mm,
I don't know why we have such a strong desire. I think that's just God who loves us and gives us free will. And
mm,
the flesh is weak. I don't know. The flesh is weak. How do I deal with it? There was a point in my life that I was getting very frustrated with it. I
mm,
was like, gosh, like, why did I do that again? It was the same sin over and over and over again. And every time I'd be like, why did I do that? And then I'd go do it again. And it was just
mm,
perpetual sin. Um, and it took me a while to get out of that cycle. And
mm,
Jesus is the only one that pulled me out of the cycle because it at some point became an addiction. It was something that I needed to do. Um,
mm,
and so now the way that I deal with sin, if I fall back into that sin or I, do something that is terrible, number one, I like to just talk about it. That's something
mm,
because the more I talk about it, the harder it is to sit on my soul.
mm,
If I tell someone, I tell a group of people, then it can't just sit inside of me and fester and grow you know, like a weed in my heart. If I get it out there,
mm,
then it's out there. People know I did it. It's wrong. I have the shame. And then, I give it to God and I say, God, I'm sorry. I'm weak. I'm weak. But,
mm, mm.
please keep helping me grow from this and learn from this.
Mm. No, I love that. That was Guiliana Kiloze. It's not a goodbye for now. You're going to be coming at the end of the show, which is the grand finale of Debated, where we play the debated game. Joining us next, we have Zina Ikeme joining us on the show. Before we play Zina Ikeme, we will play a little clip from some of the things that she's
A
done
man's
in
response to your actions is what defines your worth, right?
What makes women actually happy is family. So when women are having sex with multiple partners, it devalues them for men, right?
For men. So,
yes. So
men define a woman's worth.
Well, I would say both of them kind of define one another's worth because I think the ultimate goal for people to be happy is actually family.
Okay, so you're saying
Not work.
in all cases, a woman is going to be more fulfilled in regards to family. Like
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And this is going to work in all cases. So you're saying there's no individual case in which a woman can feel fulfilled without being tied to other people in the case of family.
I think
Navigate your life, right, in accordance kind of to this principle of self-sacrifice. Can I say it in that way?
Yes, you can definitely say it that way. That's exactly right. And navigate is the right term.
So someone does not have to have any awareness of Christ, of the story of Jesus, but let's say 60% of their actions, right, or more, whatever kind of metric you want to use, are in line with this self-sacrificial.
So the Christian thinkers of the Middle Ages dealt exactly with that problem when they were talking about the pre-Christian philosophers, for example. And they noted the similarity, let's say, between pre-Christian Greek thought and later Christian thought, and presumed that there were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right. So is that person Christian, though? Is that person Christian?
To some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian propositions, but they're acting out the pattern. Right. So you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things, and you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
So then they'd be 8/12 Christian or something like that.
Christian. Well, but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am Christian? Like I am Christian, not 8/12, but Christian.
Well, I hesitate to do that personally, because I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming. The technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12s or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation, how you act and what you imagine and what you say, they're the same, right? But you can imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing, and you could imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner but proclaims nothing.
So what I'm kind of seeing is like a descriptive, a really comprehensive but descriptive analysis of human action, human thought, and by which we can characterize people and put people in boxes. But I don't see
why in boxes.
Like over history, we've seen communism and socialism talked about by governments and by, I guess, programs, but we never actually read the actual theory. And what theorists all agree on is that socialism would be a transitionary state between capitalism and communism, where the means of production are specifically owned by workers, not privately. The idea that any country now is anywhere near socialist, let alone communist, would simply be ridiculous, and it wouldn't reflect theory whatsoever.
What is the definition of communism to you?
Stateless, moneyless class of society.
And you prefer that?
Yeah. So I think that we should be moving towards
communism.
Yeah. Stateless, moneyless class of society.
So you don't think a person like me should exist with the amount of wealth that I have? Yeah,
because I think that we're getting to this point where we're creating fake scarcity for people like you to accumulate the wealth that you have on the basis of private ownership. Okay, so you're not capitalist. You're definitely not capitalist. You're not socialist.
There you go. That is Zina. Zina has debated all of them, and that Zina is the perfect guest for debated, because she doesn't mess about. She should be called the queen of debates. Zina, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Zina, watching you go head to head with some of these people has been amazing. You are incredible. But tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Little birdie told me you have a Nigerian background. You're from Nigeria, or your upbringing is Nigeria. Or can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you got into debates and everything else?
Yeah, well, my parents are both immigrants. They immigrated here around the year 2000. And yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up. And I guess I sort of got into debate. It's kind of funny. I never was in any debate teams or anything of that sort, but I had my own platform where I kind of discussed my own views. I'd always been interested in politics, specifically starting through quarantine. I had a lot of time to read. And that's when I feel like my mind kind of almost exploded with the kind of information that I was exposed to about the world, about the way that our economy is shaped, social issues, things of that sort. And from there, I started doing TikTok, and now we are here. And I think I got a lot of my start through kind of going on these debates publicly on YouTube platforms, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Now that's amazing, and you've gone head to head with some of the heavyweights in terms of debating. Candice, how is it? how's it like going head to head with Candice to start with? Was she someone that you'd been inspired by in the past, or do you see eye to eye with some of her views or not?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Candace is someone who I see eye to eye with. I had definitely been familiar with her content. She's definitely a formal speaker. She definitely knows how to keep herself composed. And I think her rhetoric in regards to debate tactic is very firm. The thing is, though, I'm not the kind of debater who is rhetoric based. I've never been someone who is good with all the gotcha arguments or anything like that. I kind of come with what I feel or know to be true, and I kind of just display that in conversation. I would say that, like, while a lot of debaters, especially today, are very concerned with kind of the formulation of arguments, I'm more so concerned with the content of what I'm saying. But yeah, it was definitely a nerve-wracking experience, being someone who has never been formally debate trained. But I will say that I was glad to have had the opportunity to talk to someone who has so much influence. So yeah.
No, I love that. I've been asking all the guests today, in the world that we're living in now, it's become very apparent that there are two sides at play. It kind of feels like it's good against evil. And there are loads of tribulations going on and everything else going on. How would you describe? I always say everyone looks at everything with their own lens. Some people might look at it and think, hey, you know what? I don't see that. I see peace. So how would you describe what you see in the world today?
I think right now, I mean, of course, the world is a very very large basis we're trying to cover here. As an American, what I'm seeing, at least in my country, is I would say the collective conscious is very, very fatigued, and we're looking for something to give us certainty. That's what I would say. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people are experiencing economic struggles and emotional and mental health struggles that have been unprecedented with the emergence of the internet, with the emergence of just like these screens that we're always on, as well as just like the economy, which has been, as we know throughout the years, there are recessions, not only in America, but in, obviously the UK. We see that like the economy dips, and this, the working class feels that. I think that collectively we're seeing people feel the fatigue of all these combinations of factors, and a lot of people are looking for someone to give them certainty and to give them clarity, or to give them a message that sounds good. And that is leading to emotions taking precedent over fact. We're starting to see kind of terms like alternative facts come up. This idea of like anyone who is educated or going to college or seeking a higher form of proof or evidence to be doing too much or trying to trick us. And I think that this is a very like scary time for information, for knowledge, and for certainty, because emotion is taking precedence over truth, I believe. So I know a lot of people will say that like we should try not to take sides, but I think that we're at a point where when fact is being contended over and over again, there becomes a right and wrong that we need to defend, just to secure the future of our nation, for our children, for education in of itself. So yeah.
No, I love that. And one of the clips that we played earlier on, you were talking to Jordan Peterson about Christianity. Obviously, he's going through something personal now with his health, and we just pray that everything goes well with him. But what's your stance on Christianity? What's your relationship with God like, Zina?
Yeah, I think a lot of this kind of goes down to the terms that Jordan Peterson would kind of come back to as well, which are like, what do you mean by Christianity and what do you mean by God? Because again, we're living in these times where people's conceptions of their God and their religion and their beliefs are very much kind of scattered, all over the place. I would say that I believe that religion can definitely be used as a tool, just psychologically. We know that human beings have a concept of self and oftentimes need existential questions answered to satisfy just this questioning, this internal inquiry that we have. I think that that's fascinating. And religion really offers that for people, some peace, some stability, some kind of guidance when life is difficult. However, when we start to make more large-reaching claims about like historical fact and other things like that, I do start to get wary. I believe that Christianity in general and religion are very useful tools, but I would say that like we've gotten to a point where there are some questions that religion cannot answer, and that's where I would turn to science and biology that have been able to explain a lot of the gaps that oftentimes religion is not able to. So with that being said, I kind of consider myself an agnostic, a spiritual person. I definitely see the value of spiritual teachings and engaging with that part of the self, because it does exist. We know that even based on science. But I would say that like we do have to be careful when we look at like just like when we talk about facts and certainty, because once again, these are things that, especially in today's climate, are being challenged and they're not very stable today. So yeah.
So do you think a lot of things being challenged in the, because you mentioned spirituality, a lot of things being challenged in the physical lane will not work in a spiritual lane, because it wouldn't make sense, because most of spirituality, because it's spirituality, doesn't make sense, right? I mean, for example, yes, you know, you can call the Heavenly Father Yahweh, God, or whatever you call. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about your relationship with the Most High, who's spiritual, by the way. When something happens, sometimes you can't scientifically explain why that happened. Would you agree that the things that might happen that you like, I can't put a finger in it. That's just a miracle, good or bad. That's just, it's not, this is unbelievable. This situation, I would never have thought about it. And I'm in my 40s and living through a whole period of change. I've seen so much change that's happened that people will never have thought possible. Like literally in the 90s, if someone said that you can have something like ChatGPT or AI, they'll call that. And I remember a time in the 80s when if you said you could speak to someone on a phone and it would appear in another country, the people would think that would be crazy. So that's describing things that are man-made. But when we talk about spirituality, now there's no explanation to it. It goes to your actual spirit connecting to the spiritual force out there. So do you kind of think that when it comes to your spiritual connection with the Most High, it is difficult to debate that which you don't fully know about, because that's more than science?
Yeah, I think when it comes to religion in general, this is something where it's like, even the smartest Christians I know will tell you that this is not something that you can debate. Christianity, God, the existence of God. It is somewhat of, I would say, an experience and a relationship that you have to have yourself with, God, whatever, that means to you. And with that being said, I think that oftentimes when we look at like, what it means when God reveals himself to you, or when something is a miracle, oftentimes that does mean something that cannot be explained, or we don't have access to the reason for it nowadays. And oftentimes you would look at like, just like environmental phenomenons. And in the past, these would be explained by, religious believers as miracles, as things that we cannot explain that are just genuinely beautiful. Like if I went outside and I saw like, I don't know, if I wanted to go see like Aurora Borealis or something like that, and I had no access to the science or the textbooks or anything about how the climate works, I would sit there and think, this must be magic. I've never seen something like this before. The colors in the sky, that's insane. But I think that can be a useful placeholder until, if ever, we have the science to catch up with us to explain what these mechanisms and what these processes are. I think that truth in of itself as a concept is not absolute. I think that even throughout time, science has updated itself. It's always a process, the scientific method. It continues to check itself so it can be the most true on the basis of what we know, on the basis of the concept text that we have, right? So with that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with considering certain phenomenons as miracles, because sometimes we genuinely cannot explain things. We don't have access to all information. We've only explored 1% of space. Like we can't say that we have access to all of these things. What I will say though is that sometimes, in general, when we use this placeholder of a miracle to make claims that are larger than the scope that we do have, that is when it becomes a little bit of a problem, I would say, when we use I would say these placeholders of miracles to dictate things outside of that scope. That's the only time I would say it might not be beneficial placeholder, but I think that we can definitely call some things genuinely unexplainable. That makes sense to me.
Okay, so we are going to get to the part of the show which we call the debated red box. And this part of the show, we're going to get everybody who was a guest on the show to join the grand finale, where we will pick few cards from the debated box. And it's really lighthearted. Everyone will give their hot take. So what's your hot take as regards to that? And we'll give their own views on it. So I'm going to bring everybody back on the show. So we have everybody back on the show. We have Melissa Hall, we have Guiliana, we have Zina back on. And what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to pick a random card from the debated box, and then everybody will give their points of views on what they think about this, right? If you agree, you agree. If you disagree, you disagree. I don't know what we're picking. It's as random as it comes. The producers did it, so I haven't seen it myself. All right, so I'm going to pick the first one in. Right. First card is, are we getting comfortable not talking to each other because of the internet? Are we getting comfortable not talking to each other because of the internet? Now, think about this carefully. Prior to the internet, were we talking to each other? Were we more social? Or did Mark Zuckerberg, a guy who wasn't social, who created a platform to socialize people, taught us how to be social? If that makes sense, let's go for it. I'll start with you, Melissa, and then we go to Zina and then Guiliana.
I think that the internet can also foster creating connection, but I do think that when everybody has a phone in their hand, the temptation to stay focused on what's in front of us rather than reach out and form connection through conversation or interaction, I think that is what I see. But I also have found that the internet has collapsed the world and allowed us to connect with people that we would never otherwise have any hope of meeting, let alone an opportunity. So I think it can do both. I think it can at times be a limitation, but I've also seen how it can absolutely create opportunities for community to grow and for people to come together that otherwise would not be able to.
Zina, do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Melissa here. I think that in regards to social media, we've seen that definitely, like, we have people all over the world who are now able to connect that never would have been before. Relationships even come off of the social media apps. But I think that to take the conversation even further, AI, I am unfortunately predicting, is going to become a replacement for actual human connection. I just saw recently that ChatGPT is trying to release AI that can sub in as a romantic partner. They'll be allowed to access even deeper, intimate relationships that should be reserved only for human beings. So I see that, I'm thinking that if we even just look at it biologically, there's part of our brain that really does value human connection. And usually in the past, when we had that urge, we would reach out to real people. We would step outside of our house, we would form a connection, and we would get through the awkward phase, and we would meet people, make friends, make romantic partners. And now I think that people are going to start opting for the frictionless route, which is going to be pulling out their phone and talking to an almost human robot that will always agree with you. You'll never have any awkward pauses, no stuttering, no feeling, neglected, and having something that will always agree with you. And I'm really afraid of that. And I think that's going to be the future that we're looking at if things don't make a drastic change. So, yeah.
I agree.
That is true. And do you think people can change that now, or do you think it's just gone past it? It's now, there is no coming back from that?
I mean, I think that to ever make the claim that there's no coming back, I don't think that claim is ever beneficial. Even if there's a 1% chance out of 100 that we could make the change, you have to start acting as if that 1% chance will will come true. It all starts with individual action, but I think collective action and collectively taking a stance about how we want this kind of technology to be used will be key. And just kind of like having that self-will and then enacting that will onto your community will be kind of the way that we can hopefully solve this problem. But I think that it takes the hope and the belief first that we can do something about it, and actually having the care for yourself and other people to make the change.
I love that. Guiliana, your turn. Are we getting more comfortable not talking to each other because of the internet?
I think it depends on the person and the generation. I think that, my generation, the iPhone came out June 29th of 2007. Someone can fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So, that was at the very beginning of my, I was born in 2002. So we kind of had like a little bit of it, but not crazy. We started to see it in school. And I think it was like the generation right after mine that really got the brunt of it, that really grew up with it. For my generation, I think we kind of developed our personalities before having like full access to technology. So I don't think that made a social person any less social. I think that actually connected them more with other people. Like you guys were saying, Zina and Melissa, I think, I completely agree with that. I think that connected them more with other people. But, people who weren't very social, did it retract them into their homes and on their devices more? Maybe, but again, that's just their personality. Now, the effect that it has on the upcoming generation, I think is, a bit more intense, because as they're developing their personality and who they are coming back to their phone as kind of like a baseline. How many people do I have in my, messages? How many people do I have on Instagram? Like that is what depicts my social compass, where I am socially. So yeah, I think for the younger generation, it can have a little bit more of an impact on, having people more on their phones than being, a social person. Now, Zina, with what you were saying, with like people wanting to have more of like a relationship with people, or with AI rather than human connection, I understand where you're going with that, but there's a part of me that is a little bit hesitant to like fully agree with that, because I think human connection is so important. Like I think at the end of the day, people are just going to want to be around people. I mean, think about COVID when we were all trapped inside our house. We had our phones and that was great. And we had, people to talk to on our phones, but like we wanted that human connection. So like, is that a true fear? I think it could be a fear for a group of people, for those people that are not very social and kind of just want to stay at home, like, but that's just who they are. Like, I don't think that changes who they are. But
No, hey, and a lot of kids are getting ADHD, something that we never had back in the day. I think generally the internet is like anything. It's like the phones when the phones got into the game. It's like the AI, chat GPT now. But it's like anything. It's like it's how you use it. And unfortunately, we are given the product, but we're not given the manuals. And that happens with every single thing. When Tinder was launched, I haven't been on Tinder personally, but when Tinder was launched, people just did not have any personal connections to people anymore. Most people, you started swiping people. So in your head, psychologically, other people turned to become just pictures. You didn't think about the human connection, how the person would feel, because someone had built a technology that brought people down to a swipe. And that's exactly what I think about AI and the internet. What happened was we gave up the use of our memory. I used to be able to, I personally used to be able to remember so many things, numbers, history, historical facts, all that sort of stuff, because I could just Google it, right? Chat GPT now, it's people who are really good at, writing, good at writing amazing emails, amazing letters, convincing contracts. Nowadays, you just don't have to do it. I mean, you could be speaking to somebody and they're really just chat GPT back and forth. So I do agree with all of you. We're losing that human connection, but I do agree with Zina when we say we shouldn't be pessimistic, because even if the 1%, and it takes, I mean, most revolution takes just one person saying, "Hey, do you know what?" Because I think all of us do something personal. I do personally. I'm committed to writing, right? I literally, I got books all around my office. I still write and write and write and write, because I feel like when you just give up that one thing that's natural to you, it actually undermines your full nature, which is natural. So yeah, I do agree with you guys. Except anybody wants to add to that? I think. Does anyone want to add to that one? Should we go to the next topic? I think that's essentially been debated. Our next topic I want to pick right off the box is very simple. This one is quite a controversial one. Global warming. Is it real or is it a myth? Global warming, is it real or is it a myth? Guiliana, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah. Um, I have mixed reviews. I have mixed opinions on this.
Right.
There I like do I personally say, so I live in Florida. I live in Florida. It's pretty sunny here, but this past, couple a week maybe, it's been pretty cold, and this is, new for Florida because we don't really get cold this early on. So do I like see it? No. Do I think that it is a thing? Just, thinking about all the things that we are doing, and like how much we are affecting the earth and what's around us. Yeah. That's my that's,
Okay. Um,
that's it.
Zena, global warming, is it real or is it a myth?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that, again, we do agree that it's real. I mean, I am taking a class. I go to USC. I'm taking a class on climate change right now, which essentially is pretty much all about global warming. So if anyone does want a little bit more of like a in-depth analysis of like what might be going on, I can provide that. But what we know right now, I'll just give something really brief. We have CO2 is at around 480 parts per million within the atmosphere right now, which if we look at the past, it hasn't been there since one of the most major natural warming periods in the environment that was thousands and thousands of years ago. Usually pre-industrial revolution, we saw that it hovered around 200 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. And CO2 is important because it's a greenhouse gas, and greenhouse gases trap heat. We know this, again, just through scientific experiments, that greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are what trap heat in the atmosphere. And that's what keeps the environment or the globe warm enough for us to live on, right? Obviously, other planets are too hot or too cold. We have just the right amount of heat in our atmosphere usually that human life and animal life can exist on this planet. As we produce more CO2, and that is released by things like, car emissions and factory emissions, as we release more CO2, that warms the atmosphere, which is why we have drastically more CO2 in the atmosphere, which means more heat is being trapped, which means it's getting warmer. We know this kind of without a doubt now. So I just kind of know some of that because I am taking the class. And I think honestly, if I'm being completely honest, the fact that we are contesting that is a little bit scary for me, because the rise in the sea levels and the melting of the ice is going to affect all of us in the near future, and definitely our grandkids are going to see the effects. So I think that is something that we definitely need to keep tabs on. So yeah.
Definitely. Lisa, what did you think?
I absolutely think that global warming is real. And I think that there's so much evidence to support that. I think that as we look at the condition of the world and the changes that we're making, the earth is a resource that we must respect. And if we all want civilization to continue, we have to be mindful of what we're doing to the earth that we all inhabit. Absolutely.
Okay. We've got two more, and then we will call it a day. This one is digital ID. We are having it in the UK here. It's been rammed right in our throats. we had a member of parliament last week talk about it. Digital ID, is it essential for human beings, or is it an entry to the mark of the beast? What's your take? We'll start with Zina, and then we go to Guiliana, and then Melissa.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with this topic of digital ID. I think that we are moving towards a more digital world, though, as we've been talking about with AI, with social media platforms, et cetera. It could be beneficial for people to just, for it to be handy. And I think that we've already made, I think, probably more drastic pushes towards kind of just like the technological side of things in regards to moving from physical to technology. So I don't really have too many thoughts, but I would love to hear points for or against it. I just would say I'm not as well versed.
Definitely. Yeah. Now I was interviewing Elon Musk's dad literally a few weeks ago, and I asked him blatantly. I said, "Your son is literally wanting to implement Neuralink, which will be something that will be implemented into your brain." I mean, the tests are going on now. They've already done so many tests, and they're fully ready to unleash that to the public. That's part of what digital ID is going to end up being. And then obviously when we talked to the MP last week, he was talking about the system in China, which now started as just a digital ID, very simple. Then it moved into a social credit system, which reminded us of sort of like a Black Mirror series of, you can get locked out of your finances because we're moving into more, as you said, a digital economy where the cash, it's not going to work anymore. It's going to be cashless. So you've got a system in China where if you do not behave yourself, so for example, if we're on a debate like this and you said something that offends the government, you can be blocked out of just going to do your groceries, blocked out of going to school, blocked out of going to work. So is that something that takes away our freedom, for example, going into that sphere because you're not given a choice? So you already have your passport, your IDs, et cetera, but when you're not given a choice to get into a system that can end up controlling you, is that a risky road to go into? And are people in their right minds to revolt against it, or people should just accept it and say, well, that's part of life?
Yeah, I mean,
Zina, and then I'll move to you. Yeah.
Thanks for giving me more clarity with that. I think definitely with the Black Mirror, as someone who really loves that show, I'm so surprised to see how it's aligning so well with the future and reality, and it's very scary. I think all of the technological developments we can see in our day-to-day lives, how they can make so many menial tasks so much easier, how they can provide so much ease to, systems and things that used to take so long. And in seeing all these effects that can be positive, I'm noticing that there's so many overwhelmingly negative effects. And I think that says more about the people behind the technology rather than the technology in of itself. All these are merely tools. And I think that we need to look at what our society values and what our society is founded upon. And when we notice our system, which is, I think the biggest thing to look at is our economic system. And how it works is that we continue to see the gap between the rich and the poor continue to get exacerbated and get larger and larger and larger. And we see that people of, different communities are punished differently by the system. We see that people are pushed into jails when we know just by psychological studies that jailing and these institutions are not actually going to be effective in changing behavior. So we need to look, I think, at the values of our society to then see if these devices, we're ready for them. I think that we definitely need to align our society before we think about implementing more and more of these devices that will make our society work faster, because all this is going to do is make our mechanisms that we already have in place faster and more expedited. If our society in of itself is not aligned, is not in tune with the values that we want, then that's just going to be more apparent. It's just going to be made more apparent by these tools. So I think that it's more about our society and what we're doing and what we're using the AI for, rather than if the AI is good or bad. So that's kind of my take. That's always been my take when it comes to this question.
I like the take of it's not the instrument, is the people behind the instrument, which is key sometimes. Electricity is not harmful. You can use that to cook food, but you can also use electricity to do crazy things with it. So that is actually quite a hot take. Guiliana, what's your take on this?
I agree with Zena. I am a little bit confused where like the debate. So are we just talking about, you know, just the like the digital IDs, or are we talking about like AI taking over?
So
Because I understand how it like
the reason is digital ID and AI are all combined. It all works hand in hand together because it's not just been released sporadically. There's a very calculated release that makes, if you're just like just minding your own business, just watching the news and just happy-go-lucky, you won't understand. If you've not really studied how governments work, you will not understand how consistent the pattern is. So AI became very popular, but AI has been around for 15 years, just used by the military. No one knew about it, right? So a lot of these things that become released to the public is very calculated. AI has been, if you go back and watch a lot of films, AI has been used in those films. So when we're talking about digital ID, it's very comfortable now to talk about digital ID because they kind of pre-warned us with, Bitcoin and, kind of getting everybody warmed up to a system whereby you don't have to trade by cash anymore. You can go on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. You can do a fortune out there. And then now you get into digital ID, which was kind of seamlessly introduced during lockdown. COVID itself was certificate of verification ID. That's what COVID meant, whereby you couldn't travel if you didn't have a vaccine passport. That was happening. So that kind of really kind of got us really programmed into today. And today, I don't know about you guys in the US, in the UK, they are going hard on it. And a lot of, I'm friends with even some roles are standing against it. And unfortunately, in the UK, the roles haven't got a say. So they too, and I got an MP I've got MPs, members of parliaments that are against it too. But the thing is, once you have something to push, it's being pushed. So the idea is not just a digital ID that people are scared of. What people are scared of is what they've seen as a precedent in other countries like China, whereby you get a digital ID and that ID is controlled by one system. And then what happens is if you do not go by, say, for example, I don't know, in the UK now, you get arrested if you pray for somebody. If you're praying for somebody, someone was arrested recently. Look up the case for praying outside a clinic in her mind. When the police came and saw her, and she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm praying. I'm praying for the kids." She got arrested. So now, if you had a digital ID and you were breaking the law in their terms, like going online and preaching could be breaking the law in their terms, or saying you go against the government or you don't agree with something, which is your rights, your free speech, it will lead to a society where you're going to have a social credit system. It's like an Uber. I'm going to rate you for whether you're a good citizen or not. And if you're not a good citizen, you're not allowed to access your own finance. If you're not a good citizen, you are not allowed to eat for a week. That's the punishment. That's happening right now in China. There's some people who are locked out of the system, and it's not being reported worldwide, but this is happening. So it is very linked with our AI because AI is the technology used to power digital ID.
Okay. So, I mean, in a very like simple way, I think the digital ID, I whip out my phone and I get to get into a bar or a club or whatever I need my ID for. I get to get on an airplane. I think that's very convenient because personally, I don't want to hold a lot of things when I'm going to those places. Like we already have our luggage or we already have our purse or lipstick or whatever. Like, if I don't have to hold an ID, great. But the worry of it going, and fully being able to control us in every inch of our life, I think what Zena was saying is exactly on point. It's not that the technology is bad, it's just who's behind it, right? Like, what are they going to be making us do, and how are they going to be making us do that? But is it something that we need to like like what my question is like, what are we like, what are we going to do about that? You know, it's like us questioning it.
That's good.
Does that really do anything, or like, is it going to be pushed anyway? Because like me, you know, you say digital ID, I'm like, heck yeah, sign me up. You know, like I don't want to carry my ID around. But then again, if that's inching us towards what's next, like, you know, I think that's where faith comes in. You know, that's where you just got to have your faith in God and say, well,
So
God's
I
in
like that. I like where you're going with that, Guiliana. So let's play angel's advocate for a second. You read the Bible. If you go to the last chapter, Revelation in the Bible, it talks of the mark of the beast. Now, if the system comes full circle to the mark of the beast, and you're not able to buy or sell if you do not take that system, what would you do?
Ooh. I think that's really like, what would I do in that moment, like not having planned ahead of time? Because
Yeah, I mean,
because sorry, because what I would do, like what I am an advocate for, is supporting small businesses and supporting local farms and farms of your own, right? So like have a garden of your own, have things of your own, so if that ever were to happen, you aren't in a rock and a hard place. Right. So it's like you still
I like
have
that.
control. If I didn't plan for that, like if I didn't have a garden, I didn't have any of that, what would I do? I don't know. Say my prayers. Like, what could I
Right.
do? What could I
Right.
do?
That makes sense. Melissa, what's your view on this?
I definitely see the potential for a large scale kind of restriction of freedom. I can't say that I don't see the possibility of that. But again, much like what Zina said, I think that the technology is a tool, but the motivation behind the government agencies or the people that control it is really what's concerning or needs to be examined. I think as a society, we have to ask ourselves the question, does it align with the kind of world that we want to co-create in the future? And I'm not sure that AI is going to be eliminated, but I do think that there should be conversations and great, debate on what those restrictions would look like and how that would impact our personal freedoms.
Like that. Right. So our final card is very simple. It's actually a double one. This is a double one. And it says, and this is concerning your president, Donald Trump, is he a good influence to society or harmful to the world? Donald Trump, is it a good influence to society or harmful to the world? A little bit of backstory. Recently, he was on a plane, and by the way, you know, as someone, I always look at people. Everyone's got good and bad sides. But he was on a plane recently after doing the peace deal. He was on a plane and he said, someone asked him, a journalist asked him, "You said you will go to heaven if you got the deal done. Do you believe you'll go to heaven?" And he goes, "I don't think I'm going to heaven." I'm saying in a UK accent, but that's what he said. He said, "I don't think I'm going to heaven." Now, obviously, I think everyone said, "Wow, that was the most humble thing he's ever said." That's literally so humble. The question is Donald Trump the problem? I mean, obviously, Donald Trump, is he the problem, or the problem was there before he existed, and he's just continuing the legacy of the problem? I'm going to start with Zina, and then we go to Melissa, and then Guiliana.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I would definitely say that I think he's made it clear what his stance is on his own character as a person. But regardless, like I kind of insinuated before, I think that our country was looking for someone to be that savior, or to give them a message of certainty, to come out and be something different. And he responded. I think there was always a problem with our system, but Trump manifested that problem like in a personified kind of way, and not didn't try to move the other direction. I think he tried to kind of go full steam ahead with kind of like a lot of the problems that we've had in this country with misinformation, with, again, emotional thinking over rational thinking, and just once again, exacerbating some of the, I believe, implicit biases we have against certain communities that have been lingering for hundreds and hundreds of years. And he's been outward with those beliefs. And I think that's harmful. With that being said, I don't believe his character is one I would want of a president. And I think that that's also just, it's clear based on the perceptions that the America currently has with other countries. I mean, there's so many other people I will speak to from other countries who express that they can't even believe that a president does and says the things that Donald Trump does, let alone the things that he's actually enacting into policy when it comes to ICE, when it comes to how he is almost making America a police state, with how he is utilizing this his power and using the executive kind of branch. So with that being said, I think those are my thoughts, and I'm just really a little bit afraid about what will happen after his term ends and how we will move forward from his presidency. But yeah.
Just to add on that, you mentioned that he's representing America in a bad light around the world. Is what kind of you mean? Is he just exposing what most head of states have always done? Because, for example, we had a PM, Tony Blair, who I actually knew before he was PM, and he literally told a blatant lie about the weapons of mass destruction and literally made the whole country go to war. And today he's still absolutely minted. He's doing the same thing. So the thing is it just because Donald Trump and I'm literally in the middle. I have no seat on the fence on this one. But is it just because Trump has exposed how bad our leaders are? Because government, the word government in Latin is to control. So has it just exposed that the leaders have always been corrupt, or because he's doing it blatantly and he's like, I'm not going to hide it. I'm just going to, because I'm not from this world of politics. I'm from the world of business. So I'm not going to lie about how corrupt I could be. But if you actually look into all leaders in most countries, 90% are extremely corrupt. They just know how to do it without the public ever paying any attention to it. They're bullying nations. They go to wars all the time. They're like babies. They don't get on with you. They want to bomb you. Like literally, this happens with 90% of the countries. They're just fighting amongst each other. Is that something that you kind of think he's just exposed it more, or do you think no, this guy he's on the next level?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that you're right in that. I do think the audio is also a little bit interrupted. I don't know if you guys can hear that too.
Okay. Mine too. I was like, is that mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we can fix that, but I can still hear you guys though. But
yeah, is that from your side, Guli? Can you hear me well?
No.
I can hear you. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can keep going. I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I just think that in general, what you're saying is probably correct. I mean, obviously, we can't know what's going on behind closed doors, but we've always had people speculating that there's a lot that's not being said out loud. I think that the Trump administration is also doing that. I mean, we've seen that, like, the back and forth with the Epstein files and how information was deliberately kept from us about, Trump's name being involved in the files. It was said that the files were on Pam Bondi's desk. And then it was said that the client list doesn't exist at all. Then it was said that they found his name, and there's all these different things. I think that politics for a long period of time, if not always, has been private, has been shady, and Trump has been outward with that. But a lot of people will, for some reason, mistake him being, outward with, the tactics with him being just. I think that being honest is different from being moral. Being authentic is different from having good character. You can be honest about your bad actions and still be a bad actor. And I think that that's the biggest problem that I definitely see. If there's a question between, would you rather have a president who lies to you to your face, but continues to engage in corrupt behavior, or a corrupt president who will tell you, I would say I would rather neither. I would rather my president to be aligned and be moral and be a good person. And we can always act towards that. I think I really hate the rhetoric that kind of sometimes comes about that, like, this is just how things are. Things can always change, and the collective has the most power in a society. We just have to have the willpower to strive towards that society. And I think that coping with the way that things are is the way that, it's like the death of progress. So that's kind of my take on it. But yes, I think that he is exposing the way that politics has existed for a long period of time.
I like that the collective has the most power in society. Melissa, what do you think? What's your take on it?
I do agree quite a lot with you, Zina. I do think that our president has more opportunity he has exposed quite a lot, but I think that what he's doing in response to the exposure of some of these corruptions that have existed long before his presidency, and I hope will become more outdated as we progress as a society. I think we have to ask ourselves a lot more questions about the types of leaders that we are putting into office. I think that we need to demand more honesty and transparency from both sides of the aisle. I think that we need to pay attention to the people that we elect. And I think that starts at the local level. And I think that people need to be more engaged in what local politics means, because it ripples out from there. And what we accept, we condone. And I think we have to be louder about our opposition to the status quo, to the corruptions that have existed, in order to bring forth the kind of change that I personally would like to see within politics here in the United States.
I love that. What we accept, we condone. I think we need to be more louder. I do accept that. Guiliana, what's your take?
So I think politics on both sides are corrupt and broken, and there's lies on both sides. I truly think that we're never going to know the whole truth ever, like on either side. I'm fully convinced of that. I think that every presidency has had its good and bad. I think it's all had its good and bad. I think we've had our ups and downs. That's just shown throughout history, throughout every, political up and down. We have the right, we have the left, we have both sides. I mean, at one point they even switched like what they believed in. So I think it's just so mixed up. I don't even know what to think. I just think that there's so many lies up there. That there's just no way to know. There's no way to know who we should truly vote for and support, because they are so filled with lies on both sides.
Guys, that was some hot takes. I'm ringing a bell. That was some amazing takes right here on Debated. Final question to all of you. It's kind of like a legacy one, and I know some of you think I don't like the question legacy. I want you to treat the question not as in, hey, I want to be like egoistical legacy. Just treat it as in, everybody has a little part to play in the world. What would you like to be known for? If people say, hey, my name is Jordan, this is what I want to say I came here and did. What would you like your legacy to be? I will start with Melissa, Zina, and then Guiliana. Melissa.
Well, I've had a long time to think about what legacy means to me. I think I do live my life with intention, because I do understand that my life will have a narrative when I transition from this earthly experience on to the next phase of my soul's journey. And so for me, I want people to remember me for making something beautiful out of unimaginable circumstances and being a force for good in the world. And with the people that I interact with, leaving them better than I found them.
I love that. Leaving them better than you found them, being a force of good in the world. I love that. Zina.
Yeah, I would say that I want to live by my beliefs always. And I think that's a pretty generic one, but genuinely, I've always been the kind of person who feels like there's always some kind of truth to the matter. And that's why I'm so interested in just not only politics, but philosophy. I think that there's always something I can find that makes sense to me and is the good of a situation. And I think that if we found that clarity, then we could move forward and progress could become actuality. So I just want to live by my beliefs and speak what I know to be true. And from there, I believe that like things can actually get done, and we can see, you know, I can see good things come from my impact on the world. So yeah.
I love that. Leaving by your beliefs. I love that. Guiliana, what do you want your legacy to be?
I would say my faith. I would say the love that I had for the people around me. And I would, one day like to start something that I can, leave to my children and my grandchildren. And that's it. That's all.
Amazing. That's amazing. Melissa, Zina, Guiliana, it was lovely to have you both, all you guys here on Debated Live. And make sure you guys tune into the show each and every week on Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. GMT. And guys, good luck with everything. And you're not strangers to the show. And anytime you come to London, you guys let me know. We'll make sure you guys have a good experience there in London. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Take care, guys.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
From the underground to the world stage. One stage, countless voices. The conversation that shapes culture, politics, entertainment, and society. Politicians, comedians, musicians,